Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sheila Marmon, and I am the founder and CEO of Mirror Digital. I'd like to welcome you to our next episode of Mirror Moments. Today, we're going to be speaking about going beyond rainbow capitalism. As we all know, brands have embraced pride with a frenzy, and we're very excited about that. But we want to make sure that it's more than just creating rainbow adorned products to fly off the shelves. How are brands authentically showing up for this community? And in this episode, we're going to dive deeply into community and action focused alignments that are setting brands apart and placing them ahead through action focused advertising campaigns that are truly supporting the LGBTQ plus community. Now, I have three fabulous guests with me today, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves one by one. On the top right hand side of my screen, we have Chaotic Couture. Chaotic, could you please introduce yourself and just tell folks a little bit about the work that you do as an amazing musician and artist?
Yes, so my name is Chaotic Couture. I am a rapper and a DJ. I spend most of my time on the East Coast, so a lot of nightlife in Baltimore City, working a lot in DC, and also just a lot in the community with queer and LGBTQ youth, just to make sure that they see, know, and understand representation. And I'm really just here as a vessel to really see the youth push past any of the limits that I ever saw.
Ah, I like that word vessel. So important and so amazing. I thank you so much for sharing that. Tim, would you introduce yourself as well, please, and tell us a little bit about the work you do at Rolling Stone?
Hi, everyone. My name is Tim Chan. I am the Senior Director of Commerce at Rolling Stone. But that really means I kind of intersect between editorial and marketing, and I write a lot of coverage on lifestyle, so fashion, tech, travel, hospitality, that sort of stuff. And I'm also the co-founder of a wine brand called So Gay Rosé.
I love it. Send me a case, please, immediately.
Absolutely.
Sounds fantastic. We looks like we lost Alana, and so when she is able to get back on, I know there she is.
Okay.
Okay, speak it into being. Alana, please introduce yourself.
I don't know why. Hi, I'm Alana Nicole. I'm a Baltimore-based artist, writer. I have a column here with a publication called Maryland Matters. I love to speak about all things Black and womanhood and bisexual and all those other things. So, yeah, here I am.
Fabulous. So we have folks from lots of different walks of life here to share with us. Share with us as people in advertising and marketing, as humans, and also as our brand partners in how we get it right to show up for the LGBTQ plus community and really go beyond rainbow capitalism. So first, I want to start by defining rainbow capitalism for folks who don't know what that is. Now, my personal definition of rainbow capitalism is when brands want to commoditize the LGBTQ plus movement and the people within that community and market to them without any real sustained commitment, love, or respect. So that is kind of how I think about it. But I know that some folks think about it in both a positive and a negative lens. And I would love to hear how you all think about rainbow capitalism. Are there instances where it works, where it doesn't work, where people are getting it right or not? But please share. And why don't we this time start with Alana?
For sure. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of just even the word capitalism. I honestly think we need to dive into certain language in order to define some of these things. I think it's beautiful. I think it's a beautiful affair that we're having with companies wanting to invest in the fact that there are people who are from diverse backgrounds and who have different types of agency over their bodies. But I also think there are other ways, and I also think the biggest problem rainbow capitalism, if I'm going to use that term, would be the fact that a lot of companies aren't doing their hiring correctly yet. I saw a post on LinkedIn earlier that talked a little bit about this, where we're seeing a lot of those diversity, equity, and inclusion roles, or DEIG roles, being reposted from 2020. So in 2020, they did this big, uptick in trying to hire DEIG professionals to come into companies to tell folks that they needed to be inclusive of certain things. And the creation of these roles was really haphazard and fast. And so we're seeing a lot of turnover in those roles, and they're trying to find new people to come into really toxic work environments to tell people to do the wrong things once again. And I think we're really missing the target when we don't ask the communities themselves, because I went into Target today and even saw a shirt. I was like, who came up with this? So yeah, those are my sense about what's going on with rainbow capitalism.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Who else would like to comment on that?
I can speak a little bit. I think growing up, there was so few brands that even wanted to be associated with the queer community, let alone representation in media. I do think before we get into rainbow capitalism, we should acknowledge the fact that, listen, brands are aware of this community and they do want to celebrate the community. Now, whether or not that's for profit, or for true altruism, who knows? We can talk about that in this session. But I do want to acknowledge that brands are at least putting our community on their radar, and we're definitely seeing a lot more happening these days than even, I would say, 4 to 5 years prior.
Okay, so we're gonna celebrate that we're being recognized, and I'm saying we as an ally, just so you all know. So we're celebrating that we're being recognized, but we want to make sure it's for the right reasons. Chaotic, do you want to comment on that as well?
Yeah, I love and hate it. I think, not to speak for anybody, but I think Alana will kind of understand where I'm coming from with this. When you're in a city like Baltimore City, you see so much of a disconnect from a lot of corporations in general with the community, majority of the time. But then you see them pop up when we have festivals like Artscape or during Pride, and everybody loves to throw that rainbow logo on there, but no other times do you see people in the community seeing the needs that the community has. So I have a very weird relationship with it. I hate that a lot of people just throw a rainbow on it and disguise it as we are accepting, but they're not really doing the root work to change the things that are affecting the community, which goes off what Alana said of they're not speaking to actual community members to see what it is that we need.
And I hear that authentic Baltimore in the background with the sirens. So we
You might hear a dirt bike at some point in time too. I'm going to apologize now.
No, don't apologize now. That's what it is. So I want to go deeper on something that you just said, Chaotic. You said they're not doing the root work. Let's talk about the root work. I think, Alana, in your comment, you touched on this as well, that, people who are of the community don't have seats at the table when folks are starting to make these decisions or frame these initiatives or create shirts at Target. So let's talk about what is that root work that needs to be done that we feel like our brand partners need to invest in to help them get this right. And anybody feel free to jump in.
I think a lot of times maybe it's I'm from the country originally, so I'm from the Eastern Shore of Maryland, so I'm going to say the country phrase of they kind of put the cart before the horse, as my dad used to say, because they could easily there are organizations in Baltimore City that are ran by trans and queer people. Like you have Baltimore Safe Haven, which gives back to Baltimore queer youth, Baltimore queer elderly people. You have organizations and grassroots nonprofits that are actually in the community who are constantly saying these are the things that we need. And the corporations aren't coming to them. Instead, they're just going to get their logo on a billboard to be seen at Pride, or they're setting up a stand at Pride to be out there to hand out rainbow flags, but they're not doing the work within their jobs of teaching about pronouns and gender identity. And so you see these people at Pride, and then you go into their institution, it's trans people are being misgendered, people are still being disrespected. You don't know the actual needs again of what the community is yearning for. So I think really reaching out to these organizations like Baltimore Safe Haven and saying, you're helping the community, you're already doing the work. Sometimes it's just assisting them doing the work. The companies don't have to step in and act like they're coming to save the day. there's somebody already saving the day. Maybe they just need to partner with them.
That's right. You are saving yourself. So as the community organizations are saving a day, we need the corporations to connect with them at the grassroots. That's what I'm hearing. Okay, great. Can we anybody want to build on that? I'm loving the direction of this conversation.
I mean, I would say if you're putting together, let's say, a campaign or a project for Pride, for example, make sure there's a queer person at the table who's helping you brainstorm the campaign or lead the campaign, preferably. There's nothing worse than having a bunch of old straight people deciding what's going to happen for this like Pride campaign. It just doesn't feel authentic. It's very disingenuous. So I would say make sure there's a couple queer people at the table. And I will also add, though, just because you have queer employees, don't expect them to be your token representation at the table. They might not want to lead the Pride event. They might not want to be on your Pride committee. So definitely have queer people at the table, but don't assume that your queer employees will be those people at the table.
So respect the decision of your queer employees to decide how far they want to dip their toe in the water in these initiatives, because it's not their responsibility to lead your initiatives around Pride. Like, you need to make that a job like you make everything else a job. It can't be somebody's side job that you're pulling from another department. Yes, absolutely. Alana, do you want to add to this as well?
Yeah, I feel pretty strongly about what both Chaotic and Tim said about, just kind of making sure we're tapping in with grassroots and community. But one of the things you guys said that really stuck out to me was like making sure that queer folks are on these committees and on these, teams with the deciding factors as to what these companies are putting out or the corporations are putting out during Pride Month. But a lot of times, I want to talk a little bit about like bi invisibility, which, being a bisexual woman, like I think a lot of times people aren't really even aware because there's nothing really physically sometimes presenting. They're not going to ask you. So a lot of times there's, high rates of being ignored, or discriminated against, or demonized in that bisexual community. But also a lot of people aren't just going to email me like, hey, you're bisexual, can you blah, 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 blah. So a lot of times there's gay men or trans folks who are getting these opportunities, even though they're not getting them as much as they should. Bisexual women are like totally like invisible. People are not seeing the fact that those kinds of voices matter as well. And you're not really seeing, I don't know, we all just kind of experienced Pride Month together. If you saw any shirts that were like, hey, I'm bisexual, come, you know what I mean? Like, there weren't really any agendas for, that kind of a thing. So you're not seeing those voices. So we just got to get a little bit more widespread with our net, cast a bigger net as far as like who we're inviting into these rooms. I will say that just through being in Baltimore and like doing the work that I do, that there is some privilege in like having popularity and people knowing your name, because you will get called on more. Kind of like being like that student in class who knew a lot of stuff. But, so I experienced that, but definitely not when it comes to my being a part of the LGBTQ community. So, yeah.
Can I add something to that?
Oh, please.
I want to
Yes.
touch on something you said about being called on. One of my pet peeves is, I'll just say, like, May and June I've never been busier. May and June, because it was Asian Pacific Heritage Month and then Pride Month. And everyone's like, all right, Tim Chan, you're our guy. And I'm so grateful for all these opportunities, because I really believe that the more chances we have to put our voices out there, the better for us and for everyone. But I want you to call on me in November too. I want you to call on me in February to talk about Valentine's Day dating stuff. I don't want to just be your go-to guy for Asian American Month or Pride Month. And I think that kind of reflects on what we're talking about today with brands too. I always use the phrase, we're queer all year. I'm not just gay once a year. So I don't need you to just celebrate me once a year. I think the most effective brands are the ones that have a plan in place to reach out to the community 365 days of the year.
Can I say something as well?
Yeah, go ahead.
I love that you said that, because I tweeted earlier this year. I always use Twitter as my weapon. I tweeted earlier this year, right after Pride Month ended, it's okay to book queer talent outside of June, because what I'll see happen is these places have the rainbow flags out all of June, right? and they know who I am, and they come to me to DJ during June, but it's silent when the pride flag is not being flown. Like, I can come here and DJ, and I can come here and perform these other months, but you are aware of me, but only contact me in June. So I love that queer all year, because I definitely say, you can keep us, you can look for us in the Rolodex in September. Like, it's okay. October. I love Halloween. It's my favorite. I can come do that as well.
These are excellent points. I think that getting people to remember that you're queer all year, that Pride happens beyond June, all those things, all those conversations are about moving corporations beyond thinking about Pride as a marketing tentpole, right? So your life is not a marketing tentpole. None of our experiences are a marketing tentpole. And so thinking about the fact that queer people need a voice, need a platform, and need to be included no matter what month it is something that helps change that mindset and helps us think about how we move into a space where, if we're going to have rainbow capitalism, it really is more productive and more inclusive and more meaningful for everybody involved. I want to go back to this term rainbow capitalism. Alana, you mentioned a little bit that capitalism, the word, makes you feel uncomfortable. And I don't want to turn this into an economics conversation, but we do live in a capitalist society in the United States. And I've heard some people say, rainbow capitalism is great because, the queer community is now seen and on the kind of on the table for corporations, and they recognize the community and they're thinking about it and they're paying attention. So are all those things benefits that make it okay to then churn out t-shirts with rainbows on them for June? What's the trade-off here? I want to hear how you guys think about that.
The only thing I really have to say is I hate the rainbow, actually, as representation of queer people, and I think that's another thing where it was like, I understand where it came from and what it has represented, but it's kind of where we moved as a society, and queer people as a whole. I feel like we've kind of advanced past that rainbow concept. So even seeing like the rainbow plastered on things, it's like you're still not, it feels tone deaf to me. So I just have my own relationship with that, and I just, as a whole, I think sometimes it's better to just put your actions where your t-shirt is, I guess, in this case, instead of posting a rainbow on a t-shirt and saying we support queer people. Again, getting back to really support your queer employees, support queer people in your community. There's different ways that you can do that. I would much rather see that than to see a rainbow logo for a bank.
Yeah, I concur. I think just slapping a rainbow on something is pretty lazy, in my opinion. If you're going to do a clothing line for Pride, instead of doing a rainbow themed collection, why don't you find an amazing queer designer and have him, her, them co-design the collection with you? If you're going to put out rainbow wine, why don't you find a gay winemaker who's making wine? So I think there are ways for brands to expand beyond what they're doing, because simply slapping a rainbow on a product, to me, is pretty lazy.
I love that.
I was going to say, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jen.
No, go, please.
Yeah, I think, in general, I think symbolism can be really lazy marketing. Using just a particular logo or something to represent something, or, getting really metaphoric with things. I love, words, and I think they can be really poetic, but also, like you said, like, we could be using queer designers. Like, you don't have to just go within in your team and try to like rack your brains for 3 months and then like launch something really haphazard in June. I also think, a lot about the fact that they could also not do anything at all. Like, I think I have a mentor who used to say things like, you can do something really well, or you could just like kind of put it down. Like, you don't have to do anything. So, we're not really looking. I can only speak for myself. I don't know about everyone else, but like when I go to Target, I'm not really looking for them to like swing rainbow flags in my face or like, have a parade for me or anything like that. I love the idea of Pride Month just being a moment for us to implore everyone to love on everyone. I love that it gives us permission to celebrate. I had a really awesome moment even during Pride weekend here in Baltimore where Chaotic was DJing and I was like in this thick crowd of people. Like those are the moments that I really enjoy. I don't really do it to go and spend money. So that's why I say like I frown on the capitalism part of the whole rainbow capitalism thing, because we know that this political system that we've created is failing us every day. I would much rather these companies use their platforms 365 to promote the fact or put on their platforms that there's trans missing, trans women missing, or that there's queer folks being killed, or that there are other things happening, and that's not happening all year. So we're not really seeing, and it doesn't also have to be about pain. It could also be about joy. It could be about the first Black trans designer getting a deal with Nike. Like there are these little tidbits of information that could be happening, and yeah, those things aren't getting really the shine that they deserve. So
so we want to talk a little bit more about this, because if we think about, we live in a capitalist society, companies, brands, our clients, they want to sell things to people. And I think what I'm hearing is, if you're going to show up, come correct. And so I think we want to give them some real tangible ways of, how do you show up in the right way for this community? I think, Tim, you started speaking about some of those things. Can you give us some concrete examples of what you've seen that has worked well, or what you might imagine could work well? Just as we think about brands want to be part of the conversation, where do they have permission to get involved from your perspective?
Yeah, so my background's as an editor. So you can imagine I get pitched brands and projects and collaborations all the time. And I would say the example I always give is I want us to be like a Yankees cap or an Orioles cap for Baltimore people. I want us to be a Yankee cap where you can wear this cap 365 days a year, not a rainbow cap that you discard at the end of June or at the end of Pride Month. We want to be like a jean jacket that never goes out of style, not something that is a fad. And so I think the more you think about integrating us into just normal everyday life and less of treating us like a fad or something that can be discarded once we're done, I think the better we can get. I'll also say, so that's in terms of sort of what you put out there, like the products, but I'll also say behind the scenes, like what are you doing to actually advance the experiences of queer people in your companies? Are you hiring queer people? Are you giving them opportunities to succeed? Are you letting them tell queer stories if they want to? What are you doing behind the scenes as well? It kind of hits on something I talked about earlier. I am a queer Asian man at Rolling Stone. That doesn't mean I only want to tell queer Asian stories. At the same time, that's something I see as a privilege, and I'm very happy to do that. But I also want to cover other things. And I actually welcome, this Pride Month, I didn't work on our Pride package. In fact, a lot of my colleagues were like, Tim, we want to work on it because we think it's important. And to me, that was the ultimate sign of solidarity and allyship, because it wasn't up to me to figure out what our Pride plans were. It was a collective effort from people across the company, across the magazine. So I think in front of the scenes, in terms of products, make sure you're putting out products that we can use and we can celebrate year round. And then behind the scenes, make sure you're giving your employees the support and encouragement they deserve.
Well said. Other comments on that? How can our brand partners participate in a way that is welcomed and show up in the right way?
yeah, I think I agree, with the whole comment of us saying, I would like for them to come correct or like don't come at all. I think I'm a huge fan, because I come from the nonprofit world, specifically of advisory committees. I love when people put together a team of diverse folks to make a decision about something or to help the main team of people or the core team of people. If you're not going to hire, which we're seeing they're not doing a lot of that, then create an advisory committee for this particular thing, but pay these folks, because a lot of times these committees go unpaid. It's usually a volunteer-based thing where they're like, We would love your opinion. We know that you have valuable things to say, and we'd love for you to pour every bit of your brain into us without paying you. And I think that's one thing we have to really stop doing, especially during Pride Month. If we are going to use rainbow capitalism, like, let's use it. Let's actually get some of the people in this community paid. And we also have to start thinking, because it can't just be one off contracts. I think a lot of times throughout the year, we're trying to string these contracts together and these engagements together. We have to think a little bit more sustainably. I would love to see these corporate structures put together funds or put together, projects that folks can work on, or I would love to see them put it and embed it a little bit further into the culture of the actual company. Work a little bit harder on those mission statements, because you're seeing the words and the beautiful websites, and I love my designers. But a lot of times those things are, fluff, and it's not really getting to the nitty gritty. When you have a beautiful website with like rainbow gradients and all of this, but then you click on the employees or you click on the board and they're like all white and 40, it's tone deaf. So, a little bit more of that.
Can I say something I've learned to your point
Yes,
about
just say it.
compensation?
Bring it.
I
Yes.
used to feel honored just to have a seat at the table, or honored just to be invited to something. So I never went the extra step of asking to be paid for it, because I was like, if I demand too much, or if I ask to be paid, they'll never invite me back. And that's something I'm really learning, because I started this wine brand that I mentioned. For Pride, everyone's like, we want So Gay Rosé at our event. We want donation, donation, donation. And kudos to my business partner. And he said, they can buy the wine from us. If they really want to support a queer owned brand and have a queer brand at their Pride party, they can buy the wine from us. Do not give it to them for free. And I was like, no, but if we don't give it to them for free, we won't be at that party. And he's like, then we don't want to be at that party, because that's not true allyship. So something we have to learn as queer people is we also have to step up to the plate and ask for what we want, and know that we deserve what we're asking for.
I agree with that 1000%. During Pride Month, I kind of changed my bookings, and for straight companies that are companies that are coming in, it's like, we want you for Pride, but it's predominantly straight people contacting me, my rate doubles. And for queer people who are organizing events, my rate is like barely anything, because I'm like, they should be paying us, because like Tim said, I used to be scared to ask for money. And then this is why I'm an advocate for especially us in places like Baltimore City who are entrepreneurs. And it's like, we're working with a lot of the same companies. I'm very open with people around me discussing like my booking rate, because when I ask for it, it's given to me. The companies have the money. But there was a point in time where I was starting and I was asking for a very small amount, and they were like, yeah, of course we have that. But then when I asked for the large amount, they were also like, of course we have that. So little things like that where it's less performative, because you have even going into banks when they're like, we are queer friendly, there's no pronouns on the websites when you're going in to make a bank account. Everything is still very Mr. or Mrs. when you call and you speak to an agent. With some of these companies, it could be very simple coming from a music standpoint. All musicians know how to make money is licensing, syncing your music, putting it in commercials. You can sync a queer artist's music and you probably just paid their rent for a year just by doing something like that, hiring a queer DJ for your event. It's little things that people can do to make sure that, okay, this is how we're looking out for the community. Because when you pay me a large amount, when I have like trans sisters who are out here who hit me up periodically and they're like, hey, I'm short, I can't get dinner tonight, can you look out for me? This company has paid me, I now have money, I can look out for you. There's different ways that we're pouring that back into our community. So I think it's just really back to it, getting to the root of how you can help people, knowing they can go into your business. And it's like, okay, you don't have to put a rainbow on your business to know when I go to your website, I have the options to select my pronouns. When I go into your establishment, my gender identity is respected. I'm going to tell everybody I know to shop at, to bank with, to go to this place. I don't know how anybody else feels, but A lot of my friends make fun of me because I'm a creature of habit. Like when you're a trans person or you're a queer person, visibly queer, and you go somewhere and you have a comfortable experience, I tend to frequent those same places because I know that I'm going to have a easy experience there. So if these companies really just kind of put their ego to the side and really reached out and connected to the communities that they're serving, it would be so much easier to be supportive of a pride community, and you wouldn't even have to attend pride. You wouldn't have to change your logo in June. It's just little simple things.
Mm-hmm. It was so well said. So I just want to run this back because I think this, all these points, just you guys are nailing them. I just think it's so important. If a company wants to show that they are welcoming the queer community, then they have to really welcome the queer community. And it has to go beyond things that are performative. So it's not about changing your logo. It's not about, putting pride at the top of your website. It's about making sure that queer people feel welcomed, a sense of belonging, that they can be a part of whatever the experience is that a brand is putting forth. So that's one thing I'm hearing. And so, brands, if you want to market to queer people, this is how to do it right. Meet their unique needs and understand what they are. And then the second thing I'm hearing is if we're going to be focused on products for pride and beyond that are LGBTQ focused or specific or targeting, then we want to make sure that queer folks are, one, have a seat at the table, B, are included economically. So let's go buy a case of So Gay Rosé. Let's go make sure we have chaotic spinning at the party. Let's make sure Alana's doing a spoken word piece to get us going, or some sort of communing. So there are all sorts of ways to make sure that people who are in the community and of the community are really benefiting from these pride initiatives. Did I get that right? Okay, brands, please pay attention. Take notes here. So we talked a lot about kind of this notion of rainbow capitalism. And I want to go back to a point that Alana raised about moving outside of capitalism. Because, we are a capitalist society. Our brand partners want to sell stuff. But how do major corporations show up as allies? And so moving outside of this framework of capitalism, what can we be doing? What should we be encouraging our brand partners to do so that they are doing something meaningful during Pride and beyond, all year round for the queer community?
I really believe in, like I talked earlier about advisory committees, but also coming from, again, that nonprofit background, I love a good listening session. And I think if we just asked, I think if the corporations were to go and take large samples, I did a market research interview yesterday. They're really fun. They ask you a lot of questions. You talk for like 2 hours, and they get a lot of good information from you so they can go forward and make a better product and have a better outcome. I really believe in transformative social innovation in that way. I think we could have a more solidarity-based economy. It doesn't always have to be money exchange. Sometimes it's about the words that are exchanged. Sometimes it's about the morale, the raising of morale, the conversations you have with your neighbors, the conversations you're having with people on the train on the way to work. There are little ways you can improve the quality of life and the quality around the pride, even just the brand of pride. It doesn't just have to be for the month of June. It's about those little interactions, and it doesn't have to always be so transactional. It could be, fluid, and it could be very social. And I believe in that wholeheartedly. I don't know about you, if you've ever gone to, maybe having a friend and you go to try to help them and they don't want your help. I don't know if you've ever experienced that. I've experienced that because I'm a very helpful person. Mm-hmm. I always love to interject. I love to, let me just have a word. I want to tell you about your relationship. I want to tell you to break up with your boyfriend. I'm that kind of person. If I can have my word in edgewise, I will. So I understand. I also have, I think in order to empathize with something as big as a and to understand coming, you have to have that kind of a basis. So I understand corporations and companies and industries that, it gets exciting when you see someone who needs your help and you put your case on immediately and you want it out there. Have to be informed. I had an opportunity. I tweeted about this earlier to talk about our weapons chaotic. The fact that I've had an opportunity in my 20s to work in many industries. One of those things was healthcare. And so I was an emergency room nurse technician for about 2 years. And I worked in an emergency room in Baltimore. And some of the years were points where we had some of our highest murder rates. And so I saw a lot of trauma, but I also had an opportunity to understand what it meant to triage, to ask a patient what's going on, how can I help you? On a scale of 1 to 10, you're asking all of these questions so that you can best treat the person who's in front of you. And if you don't ask those questions, you're giving an EKG to a person who has a bottle of hand sanitizer stuck in their stomach. And you could have just asked that question instead of, going forward with all of these tests and trial and error for no reason. You can just ask.
Absolutely. Just ask. Ask how you can be a good ally. Any other thoughts on that? So, moving outside of the construct of capitalism and transactions, how can brands show up as allies for the queer community?
For me, I think I've spent so much of my life feeling like an outsider that I don't want more things that make me feel like an other or an outsider in the company. So to me, it actually doesn't make me feel good when they're like, we're going to arrange a thing just for the gay people in this company, because it's like, why can't I go to like your thing too? Like, why does it have to be something just for us? What's helped me the most in my career growth is seeing other queer people being hired or giving opportunities. So I think internally it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize the vice president was gay, and they didn't make a big deal of it. They just hired him because he was an amazing candidate. And then once I started talking to him, I realized he was gay. I think just bringing in more people, this is not just for queer people, but like more diverse people in general. I think having that representation so you can see yourself reflected in senior positions makes a big difference in terms of my industry. And then that's internally. Externally, for brands, I would say, hire queer actors, hire queer faces for your commercials. I love seeing those commercials where they're talking about families, but there's different representations of families. There's like gay families, there's traditional families, there's multiple types of families. I love seeing the representation. So internally, I would say make sure there's representation there, and then externally make sure there's representation in the people you're using for your campaigns and projects.
That sounds great.
Um,
Chaotic, is there something you want to add? Yes.
yeah, it's gonna be really short. I feel like I always have been the Hellraiser, in everything that I've done. I feel like this is no different. It's really just getting to the getting to the nitty gritty. And I personally, as a consumer, but someone who creates products that are consumed, I think a lot of companies are lazy. I think we've lost in music A&Rs. I think we've lost a lot of marketing research at like the community and ground level. Everything is TikTok and the internet, specifically right now. So these companies are like, all right, I know what a 15 and 16-year-old wants, but what about like the elderly queer person who lives in your community? So I really think it's taking a step back, removing the ego and saying, how can I affect people in a positive way, period? What do I have to get back to do these things? Why is it that, like Tim was saying about having queer actors, why is it that there's no queer actors and then Pose came along, an entire production, camera crews, writers, directors, actors, wardrobe stylists, makeup artists that are all queer? Where do all these people come from? Like the resources are definitely there. I think that a lot of times people are lazy, and especially in the queer community, um, there's always like the one person. Like Tim was saying, we're gonna go to you to edit this, or like Alana, we're gonna have you come do this, or even me. Uh, During this pod season, I had 3 events in one night because everybody's like, okay, we need chaotic, we need chaotic, we need chaotic. But there's other people that do things, and there are times where I'll say like, hey, I love that you reach out to me, but here's somebody that might fit this better. Or here's someone who also does this thing that you're looking for, but we can't do that without being in the rooms. So I think people who are in these positions have to stop looking for the easy way out and really do the work. And sometimes doing the work is sitting back and being like, I don't have any knowledge about the community that I'm supposed to be affecting right now. So how do I get that knowledge?
Fantastic. So brands need to get the knowledge. So invest the time in really understanding the audience and the community, whether that's through some of these great ideas, advisory boards, setting up funds and structures that can embed information into the corporations in a systematic way. So it's just not a one and done. And I think that's the main point that we've got to get folks to realize, that building a relationship with the queer community is an ongoing and lasting investment and commitment, just like anything else that you care about. So, what I want to turn our conversation to now is which brands are getting it right. And I really want to focus on not calling people out. We know a lot of people get it wrong. So, I really want to focus on who are the all stars that we've seen really standing out in their commitment to the queer community and doing things that make you all proud as being part of that community.
Two people I can think of off the top of my head. I think of Fenty Beauty right away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's just because also I used to work in the cosmetics industry around the time of Fenty's launch. So just knowing their mission statement and the little things they do on their Instagram, everyone has pronouns when they have like influencers do things. There are queer, trans people in their marketing all year round. And if you notice, Fenty doesn't do anything special for Pride Month. Like that's the brand, that's the core of who they are. So when I hear that, I instantly think Fenty and I instantly think Telfar. Those are two brands that I think are very who should be studied. Like they're doing amazing things. If I really sat and thought, I could probably think of more, but off the top of my head, those are two brands that I always know, like in my eyes, they get it right.
Mm-hmm. So Fenty Beauty, which is the beauty line founded by Rihanna, that's very inclusive across, every aspect of, letting people show up as their full selves. Everyone has pronouns. Inclusion is in their mission statement. No need for special pride events because everybody's proud all year long. So I love all of those things. Are there any examples of what stood out for you for Telfar?
I think just knowing that Telfar is ran by a queer person, I can see it. I think for a lot of things, for me specifically, I think a lot of times when it comes to the queer community, there are so many cultural aspects where it's like that is queer culture. So even down to certain types of music, hearing like house music or ballroom and things.
Mm-hmm.
The way that Telfar like marketing is shot, you're like, Queen is behind this. Like, everybody on the team is like queer behind this. You don't have to ask for inclusion because you see different bodies, different colors, different ages in all of their marketing, and just them as a brand. You don't go to Telfar's website and you don't see bags for him, bags for her, shirt for him, shirt for her. You see the bags, you see the watches, you see the hats, you see the clothing, and you see the sizes. That's what it is. There's little things like that because even like early in like my transition of becoming who I am, it's like it can be stressful to even go into a department to shop when it's like over top the department. It just is a big sign that says women or a big sign that says men's. And then people get to assign if you're allowed to be there. Like they have the opinion of you shouldn't be here. Why are you here? This is this department. Little things like that are where brands miss the mark because you may have like a we are inclusive. We love everybody. No one should feel left out. But each one of your sections in your store is gendered. Small things like I don't experience that.
Small things that are big things.
It's
Those are big things.
small things that are big things, but I don't feel that when I go to Telfar, or Fendi isn't like makeup for her, makeup for him. It's just makeup.
And I think what it's Telfar's tagline, "Not for you, for everyone." Is that, yeah? So it's innately inclusive, is in terms of the foundation of their brand. So that's really helpful. Other brands that we would love to celebrate and shout out is doing it right.
In the food and beverage space, there's a brand called Cann, CANN. It's a CBD drink. Same thing, it's owned by a queer person, and they always use queer artists in their advertising. They use queer musicians. So, and again, I really liked Chaotic's point where they're not doing anything particular for Pride because they celebrate this identity. This is who they are year round. And I really liked that you said that. I think Boy Smells is a cool candle brand, and they do a lot of good stuff with the community as well. For me, it's hard to think of brands because oftentimes you think of brands as these large corporations, and it's like, it's hit or miss. Really, it's hit or miss. But I would say, do some Googling and find queer-owned businesses that you can support. A lot of the best brands are actually mom and pop, independent designers, retailers, food and beverage makers that don't get a lot of shine because they don't have the money of like an Absolute Vodka or, these big brands that are doing things for Pride. So definitely I would say support queer-owned businesses you can find online. And those are the ones who probably need your support the most too.
And, those brands, definitely we want to find ways to incorporate and support. And also, we also want to call, we want to call in, not call out, call in the Fortune 500 and help them do better. So we also want to give some best practices for them to think about incorporating. Alana, did you have anything you wanted to share?
When I think about, brands, I'm usually thinking about spots that have like inclusive sizing, and I love Universal Standard. I don't remember them putting up anything really specific or sending out newsletters like saying, "Hey, gay girls, like let's buy some shapewear." I don't remember that. So I really appreciate when people do nothing and they're just like, "This is us. We have a dress if you need it for your date on Friday," like regular promotion. I also really appreciated Lizzo's launch of her shaper line, Giddy, and how that was done. I think it's been really beautiful to watch that. Love Lizzo, could go on and on, but like I think the brand itself, like I love the website, I love the launch, I love the reels that had been coming out. She's putting herself in the clothing. You're watching her move around. I love the idea of just our bodies in joy and in movement. I think those are my favorite campaigns, are the ones that are just organic. So literally Lizzo in her backyard with her flute is enough for me.
Yes, I think enough for all of us. We love it. We love it. I want to spend the last few minutes talking about the queer community in all its beauty. One thing that I always say, talking about diverse communities overall, is that there's diversity within diversity. And I think, Alana, you started to touch on this point earlier, that bisexual women, their voices are often not at the table in conversations around queer issues. Let's talk about intersectionality within the queer community. At Mirror Digital, we are focused on multicultural and LGBTQ and LGBTQ multicultural population. So all of those elements separate together and intertwined. And as you're walking in your own shoes individually, how do you think about intersectionality in the queer community, and how do you make sure underrepresented queer voices come to light and have a seat at the table?
I used to feel like a stranger in my own community, especially when it came to representation, because when queer people did start getting represented in media, it was often a straight passing white gay man. So to me, that still didn't look like me, still didn't represent me. It felt like it was a safe bet for, like the audience. And so it made me feel good because I knew that person was gay, but it didn't make me feel like we're really moving the needle in terms of representation. So I think there's a long way to go. But to your point, I think there are we're so multifaceted, this community. There are so many different people you can bring in for your campaign, not just the safe choice.
Fantastic. Other comments on that?
I think a lot of times I actually wrote this down earlier because my brain, and I skipped over it, but I'm gonna come back to it. And I wrote when we were talking about like rainbows on clothing earlier. In my mind, the first thing that popped up, it was like, let's be real. This is Baltimore City. Queer people have enough of a target on their back. We're not walking around with like rainbows on our shirts because of that intersectionality. I think a lot of times queer queer things through these companies are most of the time marketed to cis gay white men. That's what Pride is marketed to at this point. That's what a lot of, even when you think of someone like the alcohol brands, when you look at the commercials, those are the voices that a lot of times people tend to cater to. You A lot of times people get enigmas and they're like, we don't know people like you exist. But when you go into the city and the culture, I can talk about artists who have actively shaped the community who are all Black and queer. I can talk about Miss Tony, who was a legendary club MC who at the time was recognized as a drag queen who was hosting straight parties. Like these, we exist in a world because as a Black queer person, we are not, oftentimes it's the idea that we have to either be Black or queer, but we are both. Like we are Black and queer. So we have culture of being Black, we have culture of being queer. And when I look again, not to bring this up again, but I don't think I really saw that until I saw Paris is Burning or I saw Pose. But at the time, those weren't mainstream. Like I remember me and two of my best friends sitting on the couch watching Pose, praying that it got another season because it was like, this is real. This is the reality of our lives. So I think intersectionality is very important because everybody doesn't live their life in a cookie cutter, clean, cut and clean way. Some of us are a little rough around the edges, but we still in the community. We still have a voice, we still have needs. So I think it just needs to be better representation to know that we come, yes, in many shapes and sizes, but we also come from different socioeconomic statuses as well. We come from different ascribed statuses, and that needs to be recognized.
Fantastic. Alana?
I really love intersectionality. I love that I exist at so many different intersections. I think it's really beautiful that those things can overlap. And I also love that sometimes companies hire me without even knowing that I'm bisexual. So sometimes that invisibility works in my favor because I'm like, you don't even know you're doing it, but you're doing it. And so that that always makes me really happy sometimes because
Like bonus.
like here I am. But it's really important, I think, for it to just happen naturally. I think I'm a big advocate for being okay with not knowing. So I think it's okay if corporations aren't there yet. I'm not looking for an overnight, cuddle with big with big clothing or big farm or a big liquor or anybody. I'm not really looking to party with them tomorrow. I think there's some reconciliation that has to happen before I'm super welcoming of some of those larger brands. Even I tend to shop local. I'm hyper local. I'm hyper Baltimore. I also come from New York and New Jersey as well. So sometimes I'm hyping those brands up as well. But I like to stay very East Coast with it. I don't order from Amazon a lot. I was big in environmental stuff for a lot of my 20s and even now my early 30s. So I don't like to burn the fossil fuels if I don't have to. So it's honestly get more local with it if I have to say anything about it. And you don't always have to see exactly who I am on, the inside or who I date or any of those things to respect me as a human being. I think that's the basis of any interaction that I would want in my field of vision. So, just respect for everyone. You don't have to go and be you can do literally the basics. You don't have to say anything at all. You can literally just shut up, which is what I wish some people would do sometimes. You know, just my opinion, and sometimes that could be seen as spicy, but it just is what it is. Sometimes you have to be okay with not knowing or be okay with doing nothing.
Well, I love being spicy. That's a Mirror Digital key pillar. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I did not manage as well to leave time for questions, so that's my bad. Please drop your questions in the chat, and we'll make sure any pressing questions or items get to our fabulous panelists. I want to just take a moment to say thank you, thank you, thank you for this real, authentic, informative, fun conversation. Chaotic Couture, you're amazing. I can't wait to hear more about your music. Tim, congratulations on the amazing career you're having at Rolling Stone, and can't wait to read more about what you have to say on all things culture. And Alana, just your voice in the community and what you're pouring into so many young people and young people of color is just beautiful. So we are honored to have you here today with us at Mirror Digital. And I just want to thank you for helping us go beyond rainbow capitalism. And thank you for being part of the Mirror Digital family. And thank you all for tuning in out there. We'll see you at the next Mirror Moments episode. Have a great day and a great evening. Bye-bye, everybody.